Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo represents the 123rd Assembly District, which includes the city of Binghamton, New York, as well as the towns of Vestal and the town of Union, New York. So it also includes Johnson City, which is a big community, as well as Endicott. She earned the Bachelor of Arts degree from Wagner College in 1976, Master's
Wait a
of
minute,
Arts.
wait a minute. Don't go
Yes.
back that far.
Don't go back that far.
Oh,
Well,
please. We'll be here a while. It's 40 years
Well,
worth.
okay,
Leap
well,
ahead.
all right, well, all right, I'll go to the, where you were elected. You were elected to a state assembly in November 2004, and you've represented this district since then, even though it used to be called the 126th. It changed the numerical designation, but I think the border is the same.
Yeah.
And she, okay, thank you. And she currently serves on the following committees: higher education, economic development, rules, and transportation. And her other leadership positions include chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, co-chair of the New York Legislative Aviation Caucus, and in 2019, she was appointed as chair of the Assembly Agriculture Committee.
Anyone else?
Whoever's talking, can you please?
Close.
I will try to mute.
Okay. All right, thanks. So as chair of the Agriculture Committee for tonight, she's going to review ideas and legislation that the committee is considering and what may be coming in 2023. She's been instrumental in passage of farmland protection legislation and securing its needed funding. She's going to address the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and how she sees New York's Climate Action Council recommending plans to meet greenhouse gas emissions goals, which are quite ambitious for New York State. She will also inform us on the energy storage research and manufacturing that's taking shape in Broome County, and probably also mention how this area is now being viewed as a green valley of opportunity. So thank you, Donna, for joining us, and I now happily give you the floor.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me. As you know, I'm been a member of the Sierra Club for many, many years, and was very grateful to receive your endorsement for the upcoming election. So you've hit on a lot of topics. I'm not sure I'll be able to get to all of those. How much time do we have tonight? Because let's see, what time is it, quarter? How much? Let me just try to budget my time, because I also want to answer some questions if I could.
Sure.
So Aldi, what are we looking at?
We typically end at 9 o'clock. So, if you want to leave time for questions, you can kind of figure accordingly,
Yes, I'm definitely not going to be able to stick with you to 9 o'clock. That's for sure.
Okay.
Christina, I see my person on the line there. I think I'm only scheduled to be here until about 7:30. Isn't that correct, Christina?
We started at 7:30.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my clocks are off because of the electricity being out. So we started at 7:30, so 8 to 8:30. So, all right. So I took on the task of chairing the Committee on Agriculture a few years ago, and my goal was to elevate the awareness that people have about agriculture and food. I undertook a review of the current budget for agriculture at the time and the type of legislation that was being reviewed in the committee. And I spent a lot of time visiting farms and talking to farmers and producers, and also investigating a lot of the new commodity crops that New York State has been growing and enjoying and using for a variety of new products. We stood up a whole new beverage industry with craft beverages on cider and beer distilleries, which came with some requirements for new grain and new hops and new grape cultivars. And we also have undertaken the legalization of a whole new crop, as you know, cannabis. But stabilizing our dairy industry, giving our vegetable growers and the fruit growers sort of the credit and the attention that they deserved. But more importantly, making sure our state budget reflected the priorities that we have for agriculture. Agriculture is, of course, at a crossroads. in terms of wanting to participate in the climate action goals, being severely misunderstood in a lot of ways about what it takes to actually grow food in a climate crisis and to get food to market with the various supply chain challenges that they have, not to mention the weather. So I undertook an effort of education. In addition to educating myself, we conducted numerous farm tours where we brought up city members. I think I must have explained some of this to some of you in a previous meeting. But we have engaged dozens of our downstate colleagues to come upstate to see for themselves the impact of the decisions that they've made. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Nourish New York program, if you will allow me to say a few words on probably one of our most signature developments during the pandemic was to buy surplus food from farmers and ship that food to New York City food pantries. I'm assuming you're all familiar with that program, or if not, I'd like to maybe say a little bit more about that. I recognized immediately the nature of what had occurred, not only to save our farmers' products from being destroyed, but that it would mean an awful lot to our city colleagues for basically providing sustenance to their constituents. We subsequently invited our colleagues to come up to meet those very same farmers. And it was those relationships that we built. And I think this is a model that can be used in a lot of other instances, but those relationships have forged an understanding, which we then took to the budget bank, so to speak. This past year, we had been growing this, but this past year we had the largest budget for New York State agriculture in anyone's recent memory, largely in part due to the city colleagues standing up and saying, we met these folks. We understand that we have to provide more research dollars for Cornell University, that we have to budget in the Environmental Protection Fund substantial resources for farmland protection, $21 million this year alone. And that because we had passed legislation for soil health and climate resilience, bill that I passed with Senator Hinchy, with the governor's cooperation, we budgeted almost $17 million for those efforts. And the governor is going to announce tomorrow that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you've seen the release yet, Christina, but I think she's putting about $8 million of it out to 76 farms. And those monies are being distributed through the soil and water conservation districts, who are close partners in this effort. So there's all of that going on, in addition to Farmland for New Generation, which is a matching service, which we have funded quite generously. And it matches retiring farmers up with new farmers who want to find land to own and to work. Something of interest that's been an interest, of course, for a very long time for the Sierra Club is wetland protection. Due to your efforts, the efforts of other environmental groups, we finally expanded the DEC's ability to protect more of the state's freshwater wetlands, bringing an estimated 1 million new acres of freshwater wetlands under the state's protection. It's going to take us a few years to get to that amount, but it's not quite what we were hoping to do. But starting in 2025, wetlands 7.4 acres and larger will be the threshold instead of the current 12.4. I thought many of us were talking about 1 acre. But in any event, that's, I think, an important development. We've, so as far as agriculture goes, just so you know where I'm heading with this, let me read a quote for you from the Climate Action Council's recommendations, which gets me to a hearing that I'm probably going to be convening. We don't have all the details at all yet. The hearing I want to convene has to do with agriculture's role in the climate, in achieving our climate goals. And in the scoping plan, it raises the importance of, quote, eliminating fugitive methane emissions across the waste, agriculture, and energy sectors. this causes somewhat of a collision of interests because it's impossible to capture fugitive methane emissions from agriculture without actually capturing those methane emissions and doing something with them. You can't obviously release them into the air, but other states are coming to New York and purchasing these methane emissions and using them for energy in their states. Farmers with biodigesters are using some of that energy on farm, but some of them would like to be able to potentially sell it into the grid, or at the very least, have their projects approved, which allows for that methane to be captured. And there's a bit of a run-in, as you might imagine, with environmental groups who are opposed to any fuel of that nature. So the Climate Action Council and the scoping plan are somewhat at odds with, I think, some of the more long-term goals, which we're going to have to sort out. That's one issue that I'm going to be tackling in a balanced way. I'm going to try to get everyone's perspective on it. And the other one has to do with solar siting. Again, you know me as not lifelong environmentalist. I've been down the trail with you for many, many years. Now that I find myself in this role, I've had to learn a whole new system and a whole new industry. And they are a group of people whose land rights were, in their view, taken away from them during the fracking situation, which many of us were opposed to. And they feel that it is their right to sell or lease their land for solar development. The unfortunate problem, however, is that some of it is going on prime farmland. So we're in the middle of trying to effect a balance of developing solar on prime farmland by creating a system of soil types. And working with the Farm Bureau, we're going to try to come up with some sort of understanding of what that might mean for farmers who, in the long run, we would prefer them to not lease their land, what that might look like. This is new for us. So we have a number of goals we're trying to reach, and a couple of industries that need to probably sit down at the same table and come to a better understanding. And of course, we're running into that same issue, as you know, when we're looking at neonicotinoids and various pesticides and other matters. Again, no one wants to protect our families and our children developing brain more than I do. But we also are dealing with this horrifically scary spotted lanternfly and some other matters. So you're going to hear from me all the way down the road, trying to come up with some way of honoring their work, balancing the interest, but protecting the environment at the same time. It's no easy task. So that's kind of those are sort of the big items that I'm involved with right now. That doesn't mean that I'm not dialed into all of the environmental work that we certainly care about when it comes to one item that you brought up, I think in the last meeting, maybe you bring it up again, having to do with PFAS, PFAS. There's lots and lots of bills out there that would restrict the use in a variety of products, but we couldn't find anything on the sewage sludge, which I think Scott might have brought up. I'm happy to advance something like that if we can come to some understanding of what what that might look like. But a number of my colleagues are dialed into banning PFAS and all manner of things, and obviously it's finally getting the attention that it deserved and under the radar a long time. So Baldi, those are some of the things that I'm deeply involved with. As you can well imagine, solar siting as well as methane emissions are two fairly complicated topics that are going to dominate my my work insofar as I'm reelected. So I might just stop right there and have a conversation with all of you.
Those are some tough issues you have to deal with, Donna.
Yeah, I've sort of taken them on. I've taken them
So
on.
yeah,
and-
solar siting is something I want to dig into more. And
Yeah.
both sides have to come to the table on that. I mean, those interested in farmland protection and those interested in going towards more renewables and getting the state on track
And
for
Stan has mentioned wind as well.
2030 and beyond.
Mhm.
Sorry, what?
I said Stan just typed in wind as well as an issue.
Yeah,
But the sheer scope and acreage that's coming along with solar siting is, alarming, especially when we're seeing what we're starting to refer to as climate refugees coming in from California, viewing New York State as a place with, plentiful water and some air quality and, a lot of land. And it's going to be a bit of a surprise if all of the a good deal of the prime farmland has been leased out. So this is the next challenge. One of a number of them, but these are the ones I'm focused on at the moment. And I do expect to keep this assignment for the next session.
there's an interesting webinar coming up on September 28th. I'll forward it to Christina. Maybe someone can, from your office can check into this, but it's about land use and renewable energy. How much land will we need for solar and wind farms? Who should decide where, or what are the options? David Kay from the Cornell Department of Global Development and the woman, Caitlin Stack Whitney from RIT Science and Technology, and this guy, Graham Savin from the CCE in Tompkins County. So I'll
That
forward
sounds
this.
great. When is that again?
September 28th at noon. It's a
Hmm.
Zoom call.
Oh, we will definitely have somebody on that. Christina, if you could definitely make a note of that, because that really is the subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have legislation that's filed. It's before the Energy Committee. Didn't get anywhere. That would start to look at this. Just a FYI, next year we will have a new chair of the Energy Committee, new chair of the Health Committee, and several other major committees will have new leadership. So give us an opportunity to start fresh with some other folks.
Scott, you got some hands raised.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't see who was first, so let's
I
go.
think
with
Jim,
my list.
I think Jim might have been first.
Jim, thank you, Don.
Well, I don't think so. I think it was Mary
Oh,
Wald.
sorry.
But
Sorry.
I'll go.
He just happens to be in my line of sight.
So when you brought up these legislators from downstate,
Yeah.
were they from both parties? Trying to get an idea of the bipartisanship that may or may not exist going forward in some of these
Well,
things.
keep in mind there are almost no legislators in the assembly from downstate who are Republican.
Yeah.
Turns out most the ones who are on Long Island, and I have done separate farm tours with them on Long Island, and they're very very tuned into what we're doing. I've worked very closely with all of my Republican colleagues because they represent the majority of our farmland, as it turns out. They do, of course, participate in the tours. We were just on one yesterday in Oneida County, and there were three of my colleagues who are Republicans who were on the tour and helped us explain to our colleagues what was going on. So yeah, I think when it comes to agriculture, it's turned out to really be a bridge, not only for the state, but for the parties as well.
Thank you.
Because honestly, at the end of the day, people like to eat, and when you share a meal, that's kind of, it helps.
I wanted to ask a question. It sounds like there's a lot going on, but I just wanted to inquire if there's been any interest or in either, I guess, brewing beer with algae, in terms of methane reduction, or the use of red seaweed and cow feed and reducing methane. If there's anything going on with it with regard to that at all.
That is a new one to me, Mary. I got to tell you, that was Mary, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a new one to me. Sir, I'm interested, but I have not heard anyone speaking of that. at
Okay,
all.
there was, I guess,
Algae.
I think it was
Okay,
on
algae.
CBS, you know, an article about beer being brewed in Australia with
Ah,
algae.
Interesting.
The algae, I guess, you know, in the process, it takes carbon dioxide out of the air. And I guess it's
Okay.
not part of the final product, but you know, it results in, I guess, you know, an ant or whatever that is part of cow feed that also cuts down on methane production in cows. I guess red seaweed is also purported to, I guess, reduce methane and cow emissions
Mhm.
quite a bit, but you know, there seemed to be some controversy whether, you know, it was, you know, practical to, I guess, actually produce cow feed with red seaweed, but the you know, the assertion was that red seaweed could cut down methane emissions, you know, to
Okay.
a great degree. So whatever.
Interesting.
You
I'm
know,
looking into it.
basically, you know, I've Googled that particular article that was on the news and, you know, in terms of video being being on YouTube or something. And if anybody's interested, I could try to find it and forward it in email or something. So anyway,
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, Julian's next.
yep.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Julian. How are
Hi,
you?
Donna. Just a couple things about
Yeah.
this solar farm siting. How is that going to work? I mean, what if a farmer does want to sort of maybe he's quitting farming and he's going to turn it all over to a solar farm.
Mhm.
What sort of what happens there?
Well,
Can
to
he
be
or
honest,
she do it? or-
Julian, we're just at the quote, we have a problem stage in all
I
this.
see, yeah.
We're just at that place right now where we're seeing people coming in from out of state, basically wanting to move their operations to New York and to the Northeast because of our, you know, relative climate issues. I mean, we've had people. I have been in the company of farmers who have come over from California and from really very, very dry places who have just burst into tears practically when it was raining. Just having not seen rain for so long and looking at our fields, and even as dry as it's been this season, it's just been overwhelming. So we're seeing this rush in interest in acquisition and partnerships. At the same time, the pressure on farmers who have tried to stick it out and just are realizing how much they could earn. So we're just now having this conversation with Agri Markets to say, you know, can we establish a system of soil categorization so it's harder to lease or sell that prime farmland, and what do we do to compensate those farmers for not using, you know, for protecting that land? So we're just at that place. You know, there are going to be
Okay.
hearings and a lot of conversations. And
I
Abby
hear
is telling me there are dual systems. Are you referring to agrivoltaics?
I hear about your categorization of soils, but the USDA has done extensive soil surveys all over the
Okay.
United States. Isn't that good enough?
Again, we're just now
Yeah.
looking at it. So yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful information. Yeah. No, we're just starting to sort this out, Julian. So any direction or assistance would be appreciated. USDA, we'll look at that. This is not my topic of expertise, as you might know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's not really mine either.
I know, but you know about USDA, and yeah, it's a very tricky topic for a lot of people, especially
Well,
for farmers.
It's a good
Farm
effort.
Bureau is not supportive of this. They are supportive of farmers having the freedom to do what they want to do, and so it's you know, we may not be successful here, and it's going to be a bit of a free for all. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Good. Thank you.
And the agrivoltaics is something we're spending a lot of time exploring. You know, what types of crops can co-locate with you know, with our solar, especially when it comes to we were visiting at an Oneida County yesterday, and we met with the cooperative extension there are a lot of folks who've moved into the area who require halal meat, and they are seemingly interested in the goat farming solar combo. So there's that.
Yeah, there's an appropriate comment that was put in by, I believe, Abby Scher. And she
Mhm.
mentions in the chat that there are dual systems that combine solar with farmland, and she gives
Yes.
a link for
Oh,
the
yeah,
for that. So
Yeah.
you might want to check that out too. And
Yes,
other people have
agri-
pointed this
agro-
out too. So,
right, agrivoltaics, this is the,
yep,
how it's referred to,
right.
something else. Yep.
Yeah, and I
Cool,
just want to make a comment in general that we have to be careful if we put too many restrictions on farmers, and I know you're sensitive to this, but it's just ironic to me that this subject comes up seemingly only when somebody wants to start putting renewable energy on farms. Long Island in particular is an example of overdevelopment. There's business parks that are abandoned that have occupied what used to be farmland. There's suburbs, suburban sprawl that has gone on square mile after square mile, and nobody has said much of a peep about that.
Well,
So I want
I
to
might
just
have to beg to
caution.
differ with you on that. When we talk about farmland protection, quite a bit of acreage has been protected with those monies on Long Island as well. They may have been a little late on the ball game, but we have, before we started being concerned about upstate, the bulk of it went to Long Island, believe it or not. But yeah, it just didn't make a big peep up here, apparently. But yeah, I can assure you, having spent time looking at these farms, it's the North Fork of Long Island is still one of the largest producers in the state. And their horticulture work has the highest price per acre in the state as well in terms of their products for sale. So yeah, you're right. It's something important to save, but yeah, we've worked on it.
And the other thing too is wind, which was brought up briefly. That actually, the footprint of that, many people misconstrue in terms of, they look at the total acreage that a wind farm quote unquote occupies. Well, when you actually look at what is excluded from being used, it's a very small area around the base of each wind turbine. So
yeah, we haven't been
just-
brought in on any wind conversations in terms of the agriculture committee, I can tell you.
okay, so and in the
Although-
Midwest, there's lots of farms that have cows grazing right underneath the wind turbines with no problem. So
Has anyone else noticed practically every day I'm out on the highway, there are wind turbine blades going down the road? I've seen 3 or 4 a day. I was just curious if anybody knew where they were heading. 'Cause it's
Are they
been
big? They're big.
Huge.
Yes.
One blade looks like 2-3 football fields long coming down the
Yep.
highway. But every day I've seen one. Every day I go to work, I'm seeing. these
And how
blades
many
going
police
someplace.
cars are accompanying those?
A lot,
Yeah.
a lot.
like the likely place locally is Bluestone Wind, which has been getting turbine deliveries every week now for
Oh,
basically a couple of months. They are erecting turbines, and I think they celebrated their second turbine erection back in, I think it was the second week of August, if I'm not mistaken. And NYSERDA and other, officials were there on site, and there was a story put out, and so that's still ongoing.
mhm.
The ones
That's
I
done.
noticed, Valdi, have been heading west out of Binghamton.
Right, they're heading
Yeah,
toward Elmira
west-
way.
Oh,
west of
west?
New York.
Oh,
West, yes.
South,
okay.
South Ripley
Yeah.
is one. Some of these are in that chart that appears in the newsletter.
Okay.
Cindy has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but as
Hey, Cindy.
former, yeah, hi, Don, good to see you again.
Hi. You too.
As former wetlands chair, I really haven't kept up on what's going on. This is sort of changing the
Mhm.
subject. But what
Mm.
exactly has happened to was the wetland law changed? How are we able to get down to such small wetlands? And
Well,
is there any more, I guess they passed the law, but there used to be great opposition, particularly when the Republicans were in charge
Well,
of the legislature
go.
against wetlands.
So that's kind of what happens when the one-party rule comes in on
Yeah.
some issues. This one was one in particular. There was an independent bill that Mr. Burdick from Rockland County had proposed. It passed, I'm pretty sure, I know it passed in the Assembly. I don't know if it passed in the Senate or not. The Farm Bureau was opposed to it. Everybody else was opposed to it, but we managed to put it in the budget as an item
Oh.
that was included in the DEC budget section. And it basically says that the state's wetland maps will be updated beginning in 2025. So that's, you know, a couple
Oh.
years. And wetlands 7.4 acres and larger, as opposed to the current 12.4 acre threshold, will begin in 2028. So
Oh,
I
that's
think,
quite a while away, but
yeah, but I mean, the maps are going to be all updated, and then the goal is to protect the smaller acreage. And it's just, you know, for as many years as we've been talking about this, we're on the right track.
well,
And
people right
it's
now
going
are they out updating the maps as we
Yes.
speak? I mean, you know, okay, good.
Yes, they've got a couple of years to update the maps, and then the protection goes into place, and it's going to bring about 1 million acres of fresh water wetlands under the state's protection. So it'll take a
Oh,
little
good.
while to survey them all and get everybody on the same page.
That's really
yeah, I know-
encouraging news.
Yeah, that was good news. I mean, the governor was very, very supportive of it, and we just thought it was easier for us to just put that one into the budget.
Mhm.
Yeah, my understanding is that they still have to map all these areas,
Mhm.
but no longer does it have to be on the map in order to get protection. It used to be
Right.
that it had to be on the map. So that's an interesting change.
So if somebody comes up and says, please come help protect this wetland and it's big enough, they can come and look at it and
Yep.
maybe get it,
Yes.
yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions or?
I'll go again if nobody else wants to get in. This is Jim.
Okay, go ahead.
Donna, do you have any thought on how we can get the Bitcoin mining moratorium through the governor?
That's a good question. I give my freshman colleague, Ms. Kellis, a lot of credit. She took over to big shoes to fill with Barbara Lifton retiring. And she went all in on this one. And I don't blame her. I supported her 100%. It may very well be the governor's waiting till after the election to take a position on this one. I'm not sure. I think she must be under a lot of pressure from the deep-pocketed big crypto folks, but I don't know for sure what the calculation is at this point. She certainly heard from all of us about the importance of it. And now, you know, we're hearing about the impact on fish, the warming of the water up there, and the larger implications of this type of Bitcoin mining. We understand there are safer ways of approaching this. Not that I understand any of it. I just know that this particular facility is full of computers that are generating calculations all day long, and I think it's in a bad location all the way around. So I can't
Yeah.
tell you what's going on in her mind.
Yeah, you,
But I suspect we'll see some action on this and some other items that
yeah,
are
okay.
controversial after the election.
Thank you.
Mhm.
If I may, I have another question.
Sure.
I don't know, Donna, how much you're into this, but the big thing on our agenda is voting for an environmental bond act in
Mhm.
November. And the people who are opposed to it say that New York is, you know, heavily into debt and we can't possibly have more debt. I just don't know about that. Do you have any insight on that?
On the amount
In
of debt,
other words, yeah, are we really very burdened with debt and we really shouldn't?
Oh.
I mean, are we risking our credit if we vote in
well, you know,
another?
there's
big
good
debt?
debt and there's bad debt. I learned when I first got to Albany.
Yeah.
And, you know, I discouraged the bad debt I mean, sometimes, we used to go into debt for road repair. Some things that we should be budgeting and paying for as we go is some of the things that have gotten us into trouble. Also by independent authorities who haven't had the proper oversight years ago. We're doing better at that. They have borrowed money without the oversight of the legislature, thanks to Richard Brodsky and others. That's now getting better. So again, I learned from Brodsky when I first got elected, the good debt, bad debt idea. And this, without taking on these types of repairs, is costing us way more money in the long run. So this, I think, is a wise investment in the future. If you look at just the health impacts alone and the vulnerabilities and the national security problems we have, or our public safety, security, and health concerns alone, the costs right there are more than offset. So I think this is the type of debt we want to encourage and discourage bad debt. I don't know if that helps you, but that's how I have come to terms with what we do. And it's a lens that I look at, decision making through. That's how I make those decisions.
Thank you.
Andy Perry.
I have a question for you, Donna, having to do with a survey or feedback or poll that came from your office not too long ago. And I responded, and I was happy to get the, results that you got from constituents. And they cover kind of a lot of issues that I know you're going to be dealing with. And I found it very interesting just to see how people felt about them. And
Me too.
One in particular that I just wondered, not asking you to say necessarily what you do, but I found it a kind of reality check on the issues of democracy with regard to environmental issues, and it had to do with whether or not to ban natural gas from new buildings and houses, as I believe 2027, or it could have been
2027, exactly.
2027. And
because the position of many environmental groups was not 2027, it was 2023, I think, or certainly 2024. I don't know, correct me someone, but yes, the governor had in her budget 2027. So I put that there, figuring, that was going to give the community enough time to sort of process and understand. I understand the urgency of it, and we should have done it, years ago. But here we are. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but you're right, 2027.
What struck me when I saw the results was that 70% of those responding said no, that they don't want it banned. And
yes.
So I don't know. It's like tough for you, because I would think, well, here's a whole bunch of other things that 70% of the people are very interested in having this happen. I'm going to work on those things. This one, 70%.
Well, not necessarily.
Forget
it.
it.
No, Andy, actually, it's counterintuitive. But for me, especially if it's something that I personally support, it tells me that we have some education to do. I mean, it just tells me that the public needs to be brought in. And then some of you have heard me talk about this at places where we've had hearings, or we've had when I've had my own personal input into the climate action plan, I have said that this is sort of a wartime effort appeal that we have to make to people. We have to engage them. We need their help. We need their buy-in. We need their understanding. I think one of the mistakes that some have made is we just come in and impose this down on folks, and they're afraid, they're worried. I get a lot of calls, and Christina can attest to this as well, where seniors older than us are convinced that once this goes into place, they're going to have to replace their furnaces right away. They're going to have to change their appliances out right away. That they won't be able to live in their homes, and it shows that we just have to. That 70% shows, to me at least, that we can do a better job of educating the public about what this is all about, what the urgency is, and that it's going to get phased in, and they're not going to have to move or replace their furnace right away. Obviously, if they need a new furnace, or if they're going to need you're going to have to provide incentives to get all this changed up. But at this point, people are mostly worried and afraid of what it's going to do for them. So now it's the other way around. Sometimes those questions show me what we have to do better at.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Andy, for that question. And I believe it was 2024 for smaller buildings and 2027 for larger buildings. And I forgot how many stories it was, maybe 7 stories and up for the 2027 date. So it was going to be phased in.
Mm-hmm.
And the similar bill was passed for New York City by the city itself.
Right.
And I
And that's
believe,
that's going into place, right?
yes, and I think Ithaca is being very ambitious in what they're doing. I don't know the details of that, but I know that they're trying to switch all their buildings, even existing buildings, to be based off of electricity by a certain time frame. And I don't remember what that is, but they're actively working on it.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
Yeah,
with
I
the
think we'll be all
inflation-
right with that.
Sorry, with the Inflation Reduction Act that was just passed, there's large tax credits and rebates for heat pumps and hot water, heat pump hot water heaters. So that's new. And you know, you talked about education. We got to get the word out about that.
Yeah, that's correct, Eric. I appreciate you mentioning that. I just realized you wanted to talk a little bit about the battery work being done. Val, you had asked about that, right?
Yes, that was
there
part
something
of our.
specific? Was there something specific you were looking for, or just sort of what
just
occurred recently?
whatever news you have on what's going on with, the Endicott area. I know that Imperium 3 New York started production, I believe, August 12th, which is a major milestone.
That's big.
Ubiquity Solar, I've scoured the internet several times over the past several months. I haven't seen anything news from them.
They're there. They're there at the moment. I just was over there a few weeks ago. They had some cash flow issues trying to get all their investors. But as soon as that Inflation Reduction Act passed and a lot of money was set aside for climate, their orders are now coming in. I think they said they already have $1 million worth of orders for some of their products. I was over there looking at they're trying to stand up their operation. It's going to take a little while. So hold that thought. But they are definitely, the CEO was in town, and they are, very serious about getting this thing going, because the investors and the customers are now going to be able to, have money to purchase what they're making. But the good news you mentioned was that a postdoctoral student came to the Innovative Technologies Complex to study with Stan Whittingham some years ago. And he invented the next generation of battery and started the first American-owned manufacturer of batteries in Endicott, where IBM used to be. And that's a big deal. But it was not just that effort. It was really the groundbreaking work that's being done over at the tech complex that got on the radar of the federal government, which is why they wound up winning the Build Back Better regional competition. Only 20 winners across the country, and only 3 in the energy sector, and we got one of them. And the state had to put in a match, not a full match, but we put in $50 million. We had a placeholder in the budget of $50 million if they got the grant, which they did, which I think was $62 or $63 million. And the beauty of the proposal is not just to do research, it's to really bring up the entire enterprise, the whole industry. I mean, it has people involved from the housing industry, because folks are coming into town and they're looking for housing. Workforce development is a huge component of what they're doing. This isn't sort of the old days where we're really excited that we've got research dollars and we're going to try to, innovate. We've innovated and we're continuing to innovate. But now the Build Back Better regional competition was about standing up a whole industrial cluster and employing a lot of people in the process. people have come to our area. Sometimes I make light of it and I say they have the old brochure, which says, you know, this place has all these skilled workers waiting to go to work. Well, a lot of those folks left the area, and you know, we want to get some of those folks back, but we also need to cultivate a whole group of people who have dropped off the page and can be employed again, or who can be brought in to different levels of this type of work. So I'm really pretty excited about it. I'm very proud of what they've done out there. As one of the, you know, legislators who helped get the initial funding to build all those buildings, it was our hope that this would happen, that they would coalesce around some new thing like this computer. Now we're going to be known as the battery place. And thanks to many of you, we avoided citing a recycler with a less safe approach than many others. By you digging in and helping me better understand it, we were able to ask enough questions that they left. They just pulled up and left. So that was good. Be nice to look at some other alternatives for that as we go down the road on all this. But that was not the approach because of the PFAS and certainly a bunch of other concerns that were raised. But you've got a lot to feel good about, Sierra Club. You've done a lot of good over the years.
Thank you. That's nice to hear from you, and it's good to be appreciated. And Scott and I have also offered you, and we're going to reiterate that offer to help you understand the biodigester question too, because that's a very complicated subject. The national level of Sierra Club has been involved in this too and has issued a statement on it, basically their position on it. And I have done quite a bit of research on and reading on this myself, and I've submitted public comments as a result on what's called Bluebird. They call it Bluebird Renewable Energy.
Okay.
And basically I came out against it. And
I see.
Basically because the existing use of what they're getting from their biodigesters is already being used to generate electricity for the farms on site. And that's the appropriate use for that. Whereas they're talking about trying to get credits from California, money incentives from California to truck that gas in tractor trailer trucks 70 miles south and inject it into a pipeline for distribution to existing natural gas customers. That's their proposal, which just creates potential for all kinds of safety issues with these tractor trailer trucks already having rollover accidents where they've leaked natural gas. They shut down a highway, Interstate 88, just north of Binghamton, both directions of traffic for several hours. So, and that isn't the only incident. So, and that's not even talking about the climate risk, because the farther away you transport natural gas, the more chance there is for leakage from every single fitting and connection and valve and you know, pressure gauge that's attached to those lines. And
what we're trying to come to terms, what we're trying to come to terms with is that they're already selling to out-of-state folks who are transporting in trucks out of state. So, you know, this is what we're trying to understand, how this is already happening, because they can't really afford the cost benefit of them doing the biodigesters is not worth it to sell back into the farm. It's not cost effective. That's what has driven them into this circumstance. And so, again, this is what we're trying to sort out. I'd love to have I'd like to see your testimony. It'd be very helpful for me.
Sure. I mean, it's publicly available. And we need to fix an incentive structure so that they can make more money by, you know, selling the electricity to the grid. I'm all for that.
Yes, indeed.
That's fantastic.
That would be ideal.
Okay.
All right. See, here we go.
You want to say something, Scott?
I'm sorry, I was probably making a little noise there. And then it just said, wow, that was easy, huh? But
No, it's not that
something else
easy
just
here.
came up in
But
my
Scott, I've
head.
only got another,
uh,
I've only got another couple minutes. I hope you don't mind.
Okay, well, hemp
No,
has
go
been a
ahead.
big issue with you in New York.
What's that?
Hemp has been a big issue in
Yep.
bringing hemp manufacturing here.
Mhm.
And there will be a cannabis facility setting up right near where I live. In
First ward?
In the Charles Street Park area.
Well,
was
they have an
forwarded, but-
option. They have an option, hasn't been finalized yet, but yeah,
Okay,
that's Stizzy from California. The manufacturer of products. They're not going to be growing or they're going to
Okay,
be
yeah.
manufacturing goods. It's an old fashioned
but does that look
manufacturer.
very positive or likely?
I think so.
Because
I think so. I
there
think
have
they're
been
going to be a little
other-
frustrated. They may be a little frustrated with the supply chain because we have a limited number of growers and a huge expectation of
Oh.
purchasers. So I have to understand their supply needs and whether or not they're going to be able, we're going to be able to meet that, or whether I don't think they're going to be able to import that in. So we're going to have to see what happens with
Okay.
that. But yeah, they're very serious because they really like the area. I think we were competing with Rochester, but they really liked it here. They felt they're a very welcoming community. But also one of the qualifiers I made in conversations with them is to remind them that the first ward and other places in our community have a lot of people living in poverty, and that unless we really go out of our way to engage folks in the neighborhoods for workforce development and seeing if they want to get involved in this industry, that I was not going to be particularly welcoming. I just don't. I'm really, bothered by industries working around whole groups of people that have been left behind. So they seemed super interested.
Sure.
They got a hold of the Urban League and they want to help us with community engagement and getting folks into the workforce. Hopefully they can get engaged in this. I feel good about it. I'm just worried about their product, their supply chain.
Okay, well, thank you.
Donna, why is there such a shortage of product in this area? I thought I read a little while ago there was too much product and nothing to do with it. Is this something
Well,
that
we-
has changed?
You're
or,
talking about adult use cannabis, Cindy?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, adult use cannabis. Well, yeah, there's a huge legacy. They're
Huh.
calling what we used to call the illegal market now the legacy market. And there's a huge legacy market that's been selling, adult use cannabis for decades to people.
But hasn't there
Yay.
been a lot of it grown for other purposes too? I thought that.
Well, we have medical cannabis. We
Yeah.
have those folks who are very, very highly regulated seed to sale situations. But New York decided to give the initial set of grow licenses to the hemp farmers who had been hurt when the majority of them wound up growing for CBD and there was a glut in the market. We had hoped that more hemp farmers would grow for grain, which is the ones who grew for grain are doing fantastic in terms of food products and flour and granola and that kind of seed products. And also for fiber, we have a fiber working group now at the Ag and Markets. The governor just created down at the Fashion Institute a huge center of excellence on fiber, New York-based fiber, which we've been pushing for a long time. So if hemp farmers had grown more for fiber and if they'd grown more for grain, they wouldn't have been hurt so much, financially. But as far as the supply chain, we only gave licenses to former hemp farmers and we limited it at, I think maybe 200-300, maybe maximum 200 licenses went out the door. Outdoor growing and indoor growing. And then there's going to be a limited number of dispensaries, we're calling them dispensaries, that are going to be open in the first round. And there's only going to be, I think, 2 or 3 in the whole of the southern tier. And that includes Chemung and Tioga. So there will be 1 dispensary, most likely in Binghamton. It's going to be a traffic jam. My fear is they're going to run out of supply and people are going to be back to the legacy growers.
Oh,
So we'll see. New York is approaching this extremely carefully, very cautiously, but the legacy folks haven't given up.
Well, it's
what they're
taken them a
doing,
long
but-
time since they approved it to get it going. So,
Well, I'll tell, yeah, they've made it more complicated than it needs to be, but I wouldn't say that publicly.
Hey, should we let her go? What do you think, Scott?
Let me go.
Well, yeah, I mean, she covered a lot of ground tonight and we appreciate you doing that. So,
Oh,
and I know you
well.
got a work day tomorrow.
I appreciate all of you, and if I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing what you're doing.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna. It's
Thank you very
nice to
much.
hear from you directly and for you to be open and honest with us. That's really truly appreciated, and we appreciate all the work you're doing for us and
Yeah.
looking out for the best interests of New York State, especially in the long term. The climate change thing is not going to go away. It's going to continue to get worse unless we
Yeah,
get our act
yeah.
together. So
Well, and it's going to be expensive, and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to pay for all this without
And
scaring the hell
the
out of
longer we
everybody.
wait, the more expensive it's going to get. So
That's right,
Exactly.
yeah.
So yeah,
All
so
right.
you understand it, and we're gonna
I
we're
do.
gonna keep working on it, and we're gonna keep trying to press the education issue too. I'm gonna
Please.
be giving a talk next week to Lyceum locally here on climate change again. I've expanded what I did last year
Oh, good.
for the Sierra
Okay.
Club, and
Mhm.
it's got more information. So, and the world, climate has gotten worse. So I had a lot to add to it, and I can't even cover all that has happened in the last year, but I'm going to just add a little bit of the highlights to say that the scenario of the hothouse Earth, that the collapse of human civilization that can happen due to crop failures, that's already happening.
Yeah, it
Yes.
is. It definitely is. Mhm.
Yes.
And it's not just other countries, it's the US too. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Um,
sorry to end on the sad note, but I appreciate all the work you're doing, and
Likewise to
I
all of
wish
you.
all the best of success for you. I hope that you get
Fingers
reelected.
crossed.
I think
Thank
you've
you.
got, good people working with you, good people that support you in our area. And Indivisible is going to be a great help to you. And I know that you're going to get a lot of support from people. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.